Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Very Cold Lasagna podcast. I'm your host, Dylan Lasagna, and this is episode number 226 of this icy yet spicy podcast for all the filthy casual takes on the world of sports. In this episode, we're here for another NFL weekly roundup, aka the week that was and the week that will be in the 2024 NFL season. So first, as we always do here, in these episodes, we talk about the week that was first, which this week will be week 8, and the week ahead, which will be week 9 later on in this episode. Before we get started, you know the drill. For all my vets here on Very Cold Lasagna, for all my newbies listening to the show for the very first time, make sure you follow the show at Very Cold Lasagna on Twitter and Instagram, wherever Very Cold Lasagna is available on social media. Listen to the show on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, wherever Very Cold Lasagna is available to listen to on your preferred audio devices, podcast platforms, and watch the show on YouTube. Make sure to smash the like button, smash the subscribe button, leave a comment down below, turn on the notification bell so you'll be notified of each and every episode that comes out there, and share this with your friends, share this with your neighbors, share this with the stranger, or share this with your coworkers. Share the good, the bad, the ugly about this podcast and this show titled Very Cold Lasagna. Before we actually get into the week that was and will be around the NFL, a little bit of a wrestling side tangent first, because recently, I just want to get this off my chest first about wrestling. I know it's an NFL-centered episode, but totally unrelated. Like this whole Liv Morgan and Rhea Ripley feud that's been going on for like how many months now? Like almost the entirety of 2024. Like the revamped sort of Liv Morgan Rhea Ripley feud. And I had my opinions on ever since SummerSlam that this feud has gone completely down the shitter, and honestly, it still has. But how is it that in one night, like, because they were on NXT. They were on an episode of NXT this past week. Shawn Michaels, the head booker of NXT, in one single night, like in, a minute of screen time, he managed to book a better segment, a better backstage segment. It was a parking lot attack by Liv Morgan and her friend, Raquel Rodriguez, her tag team partner. They left the scene of the crime in the dreaded NXT parking lot at night. They left with baseball bats and left Rhea a literal bloody mess. To go off her nickname, Rhea Bloody Ripley. So how is that? How is a singular segment that was booked by Shawn Michaels much better than what we've gotten since the last 2 months? The last 2 months since SummerSlam. Like, what the hell? Like, Triple H cannot be this stupid. Like, he cannot be this dumb to think that, all this rich history that he's hiding from us, all the backstory that it's been hiding. And of course, don't get me wrong, I'm still a quote unquote Liv Dahmer, the whole supporter of the on-screen, of course, the on-screen relationship of the Liv and Dominic Mysterio relationship. But it's just like, when it comes to the feud overall, it's just like, what are we doing here? Why is it the same shit over and over again? It's kind of like that Roman Reigns saying, it's like missionary position over and over again. It's like, why are we getting the same repetitive crap every week? I don't know why, but again, in one singular segment on NXT this past week, we finally get something new. We finally got something new. So I'm not going to get my hopes up too much because I've kind of practically tuned out of the feud. But other than, catching the Liv and Dom stuff that they put out on social media and on media press runs that they do. But yeah, not going to get my hopes up too much, but this was refreshing. This was refreshing to see. So a little bit of credit to HBK, for finally freshening things up, I guess. So moving on to football. Moving on to the NFL. Let's talk first about the week that was. Week 8, and then we'll move on to the week that will be later on. Hopefully not too long. I always say that, but week 9 later on in this episode. So the week that was. Week 8 of the 2024 NFL season. And oh boy, dandy. I didn't expect this week to be very crazy. Like, there's a lot of craziness around the league this past week. This, again, as I mentioned in previous episodes that we've done, the week that was, the last couple of weeks have been very middling, very meh. But this past week finally brought the energy back. And hopefully we can continue to get the energy levels up as we go further down the season, as we get to that crunch time of the year. So let's talk about this past week that was in week 8 of the National Football League. No one was on vacay this week because I guess it's that time of the year where the sports competition really ramped up. But we kicked things off with Thursday Night Football, only for that Jeff Bezos money of $15.99 a month, pal. I don't know how much it is yearly, but anyway, the LA Rams hosted the Minnesota Vikings as Matthew Stafford put up a 4-touchdown showing with Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua returning to the lineup, and it greatly helped the offense as the Rams upset the Vikings 30-20. The Rams greatly needed this win. They desperately needed this win, and they most certainly got it. The Rams, they looking at their schedule going ahead as they get healthier, especially with Stafford, like I said, getting his top 2 receivers back in Cooper Kupp, who oddly has been a name that's been speculated on the trading block. I'm not so sure why, especially now that the Rams can actually make a decent run in a wide open NFC West, even in a reduced role. But nonetheless, the Rams are going to get healthier, and their schedule is softening up a little bit. I mean, you got the Seahawks, you got the Dolphins, you got the Patriots, you got the Saints. You do have a couple challenging games that include the Philadelphia Eagles and the Buffalo Bills, but still got plenty. You still got a plenty of winnable games if you're the Rams to make a run at the division title. It's going to be a competitive division, like even for how weak it is, but the Rams can make a serious threat at the division crown. Meanwhile, for the Minnesota Vikings, they got to figure some things out. And I get we're rightfully complaining about the uncalled face mask penalty on Sam Darnold in the end zone that was called for a safety. But the fact of the matter is that he and the Vikings, they had plenty of chances to win this game, and they failed. They like, you can blame it on that face mask penalty that went uncalled, but again, failed to take advantage of their opportunities against a Rams defense that didn't play particularly well. But the Vikings offense focused too much on Justin Jefferson, feeding him the ball. Like, where was Jordan Addison at? Where was their tight end at? Like, there wasn't enough focus on the other guys. But even more concerning was a defense that was one of the best in the league, up to their 5-0 streak. It was like pretty much torched all game. And even more concerning for them, they lost their best person on the offensive line, Christian Darrisaw, to a season-ending, I believe it's an ACL injury, just before halftime. So that's a big loss to the offensive line. Now, fortunately for the Minnesota Vikings, they did get some help. But when we talk about the week that will be later on in the show, I'll talk about what exactly that help will be. So they managed to offset that loss to Christian Darrisaw with some much-needed help. But overall, they need to get back what's working during their 5-game winning streak, because the schedule is going to get a little tougher for Minnesota, and they really need to play catch-up in a highly competitive NFC North. Moving on to the Sunday slate of games, the Cleveland Browns, now led by Jameis Winston, managed to pull off an upset over the Baltimore Ravens. Jameis Winston leading a go-ahead touchdown drive to give the Browns the late lead, as their defense managed to stop Lamar Jackson and the Ravens on the Ravens' last last ditch attempt. The Browns upsetting the Ravens 29-24. And when you look at this Browns team, no longer having Deshaun Watson because of the Achilles tear last week. So they decided to make some changes. Kevin Stefanski being giving full control to offensive coordinator Ken Dorsey, and well, it paid off. It really paid off. Jameis Winston, for as erratic as he can be at most of the time, very effective in his first start, taking over for Watson. So even though the skid marks aren't really going to do anything for the rest of the season, this was pretty positive. This is a game. This kind of upset was a positive thing for them. In their second win of the year over a playoff contender in the Ravens was at least something for them. Meanwhile, for the Baltimore Ravens, not exactly good for them because, even for as good as your offense has been doing in this stretch, your defense has been very inconsistent and it's performing very poorly, especially in the back end of that defense in the secondary. Like it needs some serious help. And no, not the kind of help that I'm going to be talking about later. It needs help in the defense. Like there are some serious problems. Like the fact that a backup quarterback in Jameis Winston beats your ass is not a good sign. And this is a division loss too. That's very bad. So moving on, the Detroit Lions put up a 50 bomb in their return home from their 2-game road trip. They put up a 50 bomb with pretty much relative ease, right? Like literally right before the fourth quarter, as they beat the Tennessee Titans 52-14, just like that. So not a lot to take away from the Detroit Lions. Maybe they might make a move or two before the trade deadline to help out their what's going to end up being their push for the Super Bowl. So, I mean, not really too much to take away from the Lions this week. What I will say about the Titans, though, is that what I can take away from them is I think, this is the time for them to, lose them all to the first overall pick. Lose them all to go all the way to get that first overall pick. No matter what positive areas there are, sir, you can say that the defense has been like the top overall, the number one in the NFL. Well, that certainly was the case this past week against Detroit. Sure, Calvin Ridley is getting more targets, more catches because, well, they traded away DeAndre Hopkins. But the Titans aren't doing anything else in 2024. So it doesn't matter who the quarterback is either, whether it's Mason Rudolph or Will Levis. Yeah, my mind was drawing a blank with the other quarterback. But it doesn't matter who the quarterback is. The Titans aren't going to do anything else. They don't have a solution at quarterback at the moment. So might as well lose them all. Lose them all, pal. Meanwhile, for the Houston Texans, Joe Mixon and Tank Dell each notched a touchdown from C.J. Stroud as the Texans held on to get the season series sweep against Anthony Richardson and the Indianapolis Colts 23-20 in their rematch from week 1. But, it came at a costly price. Stephon Diggs being the latest victim of injury mania, running wild for the Houston Texans. In the second half of this game, Stephon Diggs' knee buckled during the game. It was a non-contact injury, but it was a very bad injury. The news was what ended up being torn ACL that we later found out, and not very good news for the Houston Texans. And apparently, Stephon Diggs is going to be a free agent after this season. He was traded from the Buffalo Bills, and awkward, very awkward indeed. So that's a very big loss for the Texans, not just for the short term, but for the long term. Like, and for Diggs, it's also bad timing too. It's like, are you going to get a big fat contract going to the off season? Now it's just like, woof. And losing Diggs now in the short term, when Nico Collins is still on short term IR, it hurts CJ Stroud because when you look at that game against the Colts, he's kind of struggling a bit. He didn't have many downfield options other than Tank Dell. So he's really going to need Tank Dell now. But if he goes down, then he's fucked. So CJ Stroud is going to have to find options, both in the short and long range passing game. But he's badly going to need Nico Collins back. He's really going to need Tank Dell to step up. But if I'm the Texans, I'm probably going to have to look somewhere in the trade market for a receiver. Meanwhile, for the Indianapolis Colts, Anthony Richardson made some really bad plays. And, well, the Colts ended up making a decision that I'm not exactly in favor of. And there's also some decision that Anthony Richardson himself made where he apparently pulled himself for one play because he was out of breath, which is not a good look. But it also doesn't help the fact that his supporting cast, not named Jonathan Taylor and Josh Downs, are not really helping him because his teammates were literally dropping the ball, including 2 potential touchdown catches that could have made a difference in this game. So, yeah, his teammates really got to help Anthony Richardson out in his development, but at the same time, Richardson got to help himself out too, especially considering that, yeah, something is going to happen to Richardson in the upcoming game. Meanwhile, down in the land of all elites, Malik Willis. Yes, Malik Willis. Why Malik Willis? Well, we'll talk about it in just a bit. Anyway, he led a last-minute drive to set up his kicker, Brandon McManus, for another game-winning field goal to give the Packers their 4th straight win, beating the all-elite Jaguars 30-27. And the Jags actually had multiple chances to upset the Pack, but they just fell short. They actually had a very solid showing in the second half from Trevor Lawrence, Tank Bigsby, and Brian Thomas Jr. But again, they just couldn't get a stop on defense when it mattered most. So you just have to wonder at 2-6. And you still got a brutal schedule the rest of the way in November. It's like, where do you go from here? Like, what do you do now if you're the Jaguars? Meanwhile, for the Packers, so this win came at a cost again. That cost, again, ended up being Jordan Love. He went down in the third quarter with a groin injury, hence why Malik Willis had to finish this game in relief of him. So we, at this time, I don't know how much time Jordan Love is missing, and we don't know if he's going to miss the game against the Lions coming up. But based on what we saw in this game against the Jaguars, I think they should be okay with Malik Willis and Josh Jacobs running the show. Like a heavy dose of Jacobs running the ball. And in Malik Willis, he performed okay. So I think it should be all right. But it is a very important game coming up for them. Meanwhile, down in South Beach, the Arizona Cardinals came back from a 9-point deficit with less than 10 minutes to go, capped up with Chad Ryland kicking the game-winning field goal to spoil Tua Tagovailoa's return. Arizona beat the Miami Dolphins 28-27. So Kyler Murray in this offense, they had one of their better outings this season, which included Marvin Harrison finally having his best performance in a while. Like, it's been a long while since Kyler Murray and Marvin Harrison Jr. They had something going in quite some time. Like, I think since very early in the season, it's like Harrison Jr. hasn't really shown up in a while. But anyway, nonetheless, very good showing from the offense. And now they hold on to the NFC West lead for at least this week. But they really still got to show some more consistency if they want to keep it. Meanwhile, for the Miami Dolphins, yeah, I mean, they suffered another L. Where are they at now? 2-5. And the AFC East lead is like well out of reach, even at near the halfway point of the season. So it's probably too late for the Dolphins to try and save their season. But the good news is Tua is back in the lineup. They actually protected him well this week, but granted, the Cardinals' pass rush kind of sucks. But nonetheless, they protected Tua well this week, and he actually makes the offense way, way better. But they just got to keep protecting him, and Tua has to protect himself going forward. Meanwhile, in New England, Jacoby Brissett, marched the Patriots down the field to set up Ramondre Stevenson's game-winning touchdown. and then adding a 2-pointer to top it off and embarrass, yes, the New York Jets 25-22. Wow. I mean, just when you thought it couldn't get even more embarrassing for these Jets. Like, literally. How is a team with the likes of Aaron Rodgers, Devontae Adams, Garrett Wilson, among others, like, so bad? Like, how are they this bad? Like, seriously. Like when you look at this team filled with so much potential, they underperform so badly. Oh yeah, that's right. Because they got no guts, no glory, no heart. Especially since they fired Robert Saleh, who they believed he was the reason that they got none of that. They don't got none. So what do you get? Being the most unserious, most messiest team in the National Football League. That, honestly, any team can beat them right now. Well, I don't know if I'd say any team. Like, probably not Carolina. Probably not the Carolina Panthers. I don't go that far. So, look at the Jets right now. Considering what's left of them right now and where they stand, I would honestly consider whatever was left of their playoff hopes absolutely dead. Like, you could just throw it in the dumpster right now, like throw it in the toilet and flush it. Just absolutely flush it. Because these Jets, they're not going anywhere. Meanwhile, for the New England Patriots, I mean, they're not really going anywhere. But, I mean, when you look at Drake May, he had another solid outing. But he unfortunately got concussed in this game before the first half. So, very unfortunate there. And that's one of the things I was worried about when inserting him into the starting lineup because of that dreaded offensive line. But he actually did it when he had a long run and then he got hit hard. But, yeah, hopefully he gets cleared. I'm not sure if they're going to have him play, but they probably will. But it's probably going to be a little bit of a sign that they're probably going to utilize the ground game to protect them more. Meanwhile, down in Tampa, Kirk Cousins had another 4-touchdown outing, but the Falcons had to survive a last-minute Bucs comeback attempt to sweep the season series against the Tampa Bay Bucs. The Falcons beat Tampa Bay 31-26, and the Falcons pretty much in full control of the NFC South. They're 2 games up on the Tampa Bay Bucs, and at this rate, I guess it's only almost halfway through the season. Still a lot of season left to go, but the division is pretty much in full control of the Atlanta Falcons. It's pretty much theirs to lose. They'll have like a 4-0 division lead, but again, still plenty of season left to go. But when you look at Kirk Cousins in this Falcons offense, they're pretty much firing on all cylinders right now. But they could still use some help on defense, though. Meanwhile, for Baker and the Bucs, sure, they got swept by the Falcons, but I mean, they're still played pretty competitively. They still play pretty hard. Mayfield, despite the injuries to Chris Godwin and Mike Evans, he's still spreading the ball around to names that pretty much showed out, like Cade Otton and Jalen McMillan. His rushing attack still played pretty productively. So don't discount the Bucs right now. Who knows? They might get lucky and still have a chance at the division title or a wild card spot. So even when their best receivers are out, the Bucs will still be a very tough out going forward. Meanwhile, down in Cincy, Jalen Hurts and the Eagles pushed their way to another dominant victory, this time against the Cincinnati Bengals, beating them 37-17. The Eagles been playing much better in these last 2 weeks on both sides of the ball. Granted, they played the Giants, and then, well, this one being a supposedly playoff contender, but unfortunately not, against the Bengals. But this week for the Eagles, especially better for them defensively. They made a lot of key plays to prevent the Bengals from having any positive momentum in the second half, especially notching an interception in the fourth quarter, stopping them on fourth down at one point. So when you look at this Eagles team, they're starting to pick up momentum, which is good for them, especially going into the second half. Meanwhile, for the Cincinnati Bengals, things are not looking good for them. Like, just when you think that they're starting to pick things up, it goes right back down, especially with their spotty defense, which was thrashed by Philadelphia most of the game. But the offense, though, they're having some serious trouble running the football. They don't have a top-tier running back, and it's forcing Joe Burrow's hand, especially on that fourth down play, like I said, that they honestly had no business being in, especially when you look back 2 plays prior where they couldn't really run the football. So if these issues are going to persist, Cincinnati isn't going to do much damage to a potential playoff contender, let alone being a playoff contender this season. Going to the late afternoon slate of games, Justin Herbert and in the offense, they have their best showing all season long, with a 2-touchdown showing from Herbert, easily taking care of the beat up Saints 26-8. The Chargers, they weren't the Clippers that day, because, well, the offense, like I said, they heated up thanks to having a kind of healthy Ladd McConkey. The rookie, he had been their best receiver for most of the season, so he had some nice plays, and Herbert might have found his top guy ever since losing Mike Williams, losing Keenan Allen. But so it's nice that the Chargers offense are kind of picking up right now, but gotta show some more consistency against the better teams. Meanwhile, for the Saints, when you look at them right now, they're 2-6 after starting out 2-0 and practically fooling everyone, including myself, thinking that this is going to be a different year. But unfortunately, no. Right back to being mid after losing 5 straight. And again, being beat up with injuries that include the Derek Carr. So when you look at them now, where they stand at 2-6, in my opinion, they really need to start looking ahead, because they're not catching the Falcons and not even catching the Bucks with this squad. Like, old, aging, bad contracts. Like, you have to start. They have to start considering long term, and consider, like, do they really want to be in Cap Hill forever? Do they want to have a mid head coach, a mid quarterback, like, in the long run? Like, do they? So this is something the Saints really have to look at. Like, do they want to offset things next week for the trade deadline? Something they really have to think about. Meanwhile, down in Seattle, Josh Allen and James Cook combined for 2 touchdowns each, ripping the Seahawks apart 31-10. So kind of like with a couple teams that I've talked about in this so far, the Bills have their own division, the AFC East, in complete control. In contrast to a couple years where they started kind of falling apart. But nonetheless, the Bills, they have their division in full control, and it's basically theirs to lose. Now, again, there's still a long ways to go, barring they don't collapse and they don't suffer any major injuries. But the Bills, they've only seemed to have gone better as the weeks progress, especially with their own receiving core. They seem to have finally earned Josh Allen's trust, especially with Keon Coleman continuing to get better, establishing that trust, and Amari Cooper continuing to learn the offense, who got traded a couple weeks ago. So this offense seems to be really clicking right now. And, well, considering the rest of the AFC East, well, it's basically just beating itself up to a pulp by this point. Meanwhile, for the Seahawks, another loss from them. They're just way too inconsistent right now. But it also doesn't help with the fact that when you look at them, they're just way too reliant on DK Metcalf. And I get it. It's Geno Smith's top receiver, but you have other options right there and there, like Tyler Lockett, Jackson Smith, and Jigba. They both failed to step up. Like, Tyler Lockett was your main guy right before DK Metcalf was drafted, and you drafted Jackson Smith and Jigba for a reason, to be your number 2 and your number 3. So it's like, how come, like, why didn't they show up in this game? Why isn't Gino directing to them? So it's like without Metcalf, the Seahawks offense is just like nothing. It's nothing. They barely moved outside of a few drives, and it doesn't help that the rushing attack again did nothing. So this Seattle really has to find its way, because starting out 3-0, they're like 4-4, in danger of falling to 4-5. Meanwhile, in the nation's capital, a hyped up game between the top 2 picks in the draft turned pretty ugly, but it had a great ending because Jane Daniels, he had to throw up a Hail Mary, and it was answered by Noah Brown. He had his prayers answered as the Washington Commanders beat the Chicago Bears by a Hail Mary, 18-15. And my gosh, what a sequence of events in this last game. You had the Bears marching down in the last 2 minutes, and they took the lead. And then you had Jane Daniels and the Commanders. They had to basically hurry this shit up. They had to march down to the halfway point of the field, and then with no timeouts. And then, Jane Daniels had to pull up a prayer of God, and then he had his prayers answered. What a surprising turnaround for this team, man. From a couple of years ago, they were just the laughing stock of the league, and then here they are now. Just and I fully expected the Commanders to continue rebuilding, but it's like a complete 180 from where they are now. So this is just the one of many moments that happening that's continuing to revolve around this team this year. Meanwhile, for the Bears, they lost a winnable game that they honestly should have won, but they can at least look back on this game as they should as a note to maybe take note of DeAndre Swift's strong performance. He had a big run in this game, and he pretty much helped the offense gain a little stability. So going forward, maybe DeAndre Swift can be the feature back for this Bears offense and help out Caleb Williams, take some pressure off of him. So for the Bears, they lost, but at least there's something to take away from it. Meanwhile, down in the Mile High, Bo Nix had his best game of the season, granted against a very bad Panthers team, with a 3-touchdown performance and getting another one via a quarterback sneak at the goal line. So a 4 total touchdown outing as the Broncos beat the Carolina Panthers 28-14. No, it wasn't that close, people. That you thought it was? Nah. So anyway, like it's predicted, this was the game where Sean Payton was going to let Bo Nix loose, and it absolutely paid dividends. Now, granted, it was against the Carolina Panthers, but Nix looked a lot more comfortable, looked a lot more relaxed, and the offense was able to move thanks to a lot more mid-range throws that Bo Nix was allowed to do. He even threw up a couple of prayers up there against Carolina. So Sean Payton needs to let this guy cook. Sean Payton needs to throw in more of these kind of plays that Bo Nix was able to do against Carolina. Now, granted, they're not going to play Carolina every week, but if you keep letting Bo Nix do these kind of plays, then he's going to keep on developing better like this. Meanwhile, for the Carolina Panthers, sure, they lost this game, and, well, it was expected, but I think Bryce Young should keep starting. So whether or not he stays on as the Panther starter next year or going in long term, the Panthers higher ups, could see is he worth keeping around? So even though he didn't do great nor terrible in this game, he still had some solid plays. So especially considering who they play next, it's worth a shot. Meanwhile, down in Vegas, where they still have astronomical, terrible WrestleMania prices, by the way, Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs made sure to make note of that by overcoming a tough Raiders defense, eventually putting them away with a fourth quarter touchdown from Mahomes to Xavier Worthy, beating the Raiders 27-20. I'm not sure if they're going to get that sweet at WrestleMania, but That remains to be seen. But this was the debut of DeAndre Hopkins, who got traded from the Titans to the Chiefs. Also serving as a reminder that maybe you should stop giving your assets to the Chiefs. And people are going to continue to wonder, well, like, why do the Chiefs keep winning championships? Well, because maybe you keep giving your assets to the Chiefs. But anyway, DeAndre Hopkins' Chiefs debut was pretty quiet, but I mean, he just got there. So for Chiefs fans out there, give it time. He's going to probably see an uptick as he gets more familiar with Mahomes. But the rest of that receiving cast still needs to step forward and help their quarterback. Like, I was hoping to see a lot more Xavier Worthy, but not a whole lot. I mean, and Travis Kelce's still been kind of quiet outside that one touchdown, but we'll see. Meanwhile, for the Raiders, like, they had chances to win this game, but yeah, what was that red zone play calling from, the man that had courage, that man had creativity. Yeah, of course, they would fuck that up. Meanwhile, in the Sunday Night Football game for this past week, Brock Purdy and my San Francisco 49ers put up a 21-point scoring barrage in the third quarter, but they once again had to put me through the ringer and through many of the Niners fans' ringers as they had to fend off a furious rally in the fourth quarter because typical Kyle Shanahan. But they managed to hold off the Dallas Cowboys 30-24. So when you look at the Dallas Cowboys, they had 2 weeks to prepare for this game, and it made no difference. It made no difference to their troubles. Sure, they had another near comeback, but it again fell short. But prior to that, Dak Prescott and the offense looked dull. There's barely any running game, but even though it was kind of decent this game, Dak Prescott was making plenty of mistakes in this game. So the offense was still one-dimensional. The defense got torched aplenty, but at least clamped down in the fourth quarter to give their offense their own chances. So overall, this Dallas team, still not looking good. And it's only going to get tougher from here on out for the Cowboys. Meanwhile, for the 49ers, their own road is going to be tough, but at least they saved their season again with this much-needed win. And it comes at a good time with the bye week coming up for them. And they got a couple of people coming back. And we'll see. We'll see if this bye week, getting those people back, will be helpful for them. Meanwhile, for the Monday Night Football game to wrap up week number 8, the Pittsburgh Steelers and Calvin Austin III notched 2 second-half touchdowns, one on the punt return, and a catch from Russell Wilson, as the Steelers held off a late Giants rally 26-18 to beat the New York Giants. Russell Wilson and this offense, they look pretty balanced, but the real tests are going to lie ahead after their bye week, like I had alluded to when they beat the Jets. Tougher teams like the Commanders, the Eagles, the Chiefs, and their double dates with the Ravens and even the Browns. Like, don't sleep on the Browns too much. I get it. It's Jameis Winston and the skid marks. But, can't sleep on those division games. So, once the bye week comes and goes for the Steelers, we'll know plenty about how this team will go. So, that's pretty much a wrap on this week that was for week 8 of the 2024 NFL season. Before we move on to the week that will be, that is week number 9, let's give out some awards. The stars of the week here on Very Cold Lasagna. This week's stars of the week for week number 8, for quarterback, Kirk Cousins for the Atlanta Falcons. He was 23 of 29. That's a pretty good percentage, right? Anyway, he almost threw for 300 yards, 296 to be exact. He had a 4-touchdown outing against the Tampa Bay Bucks in that victory to get the season series sweep over them. Arizona Cardinals receiver Marvin Harrison Jr., 6 catches, 111 yards, 1 touchdown. Very good showing for the first time in a while in their victory over the Miami Dolphins. And the Detroit Lions defense and their special teams. First time they showed up in 2 or 3 weeks. So, they've been doing pretty good. But the special teams, they really showed out as well. They only allowed 14 points, 2 interceptions, and they also got a punt return touchdown in this game. So very impressive stuff for the Detroit Lions. So now moving on to the next week. The week ahead, the road ahead, the week that will be. Week number 9. So after this upcoming week, we'll be officially halfway through the NFL season. Like, can you believe it? We're already in November, and we'll already be halfway through this NFL season. Like, it feels like it just have started just several days ago. Like, I really can't believe it. I really can't. Like, we're already gonna be halfway done with another NFL season. It's like, shit. Like, I can't believe it. But anyway, let's get into the week that will be week number 9 of this season. So this week we're back to a couple teams being on their vacay, being on their bye-byes. And those 2 teams include the Pittsburgh Steelers and my team, the San Francisco 49ers. So I get somewhat of a break this week. But of course, I'm going to be keeping an eye on all these games because, well, that's what we do here at Very Cold Lasagna when it comes to the NFL. So I get at least a break from covering my team. So anyway, we kick things off with Thursday Night Football only for that Jeff Bezos money as the Houston Texans at 6-2 take on the New York Jets at 2-6. Like, how in the hell do the Jets get the primetime matchup again for that Jeff Bezos money? But anyway, the Jets really got to figure things out on their offense with Stephon Diggs out for the year, Nico Collins still on short-term IR. So they really need Tank Dell to step up, but they also need another man to step up on offense. So who's that going to be? They got to figure it out. But the Jets, if they somehow don't find a way to upset the Texans with all their injuries, you got to fire everybody. They just have to fire everybody. Like, seriously. Meanwhile, going on to the Sunday slate of games, the Dallas Cowboys, they hope to keep their division hopes alive at 3-3 and get Micah Parsons and Deron Bland back on defense to hopefully fix their issues when they face Kirk Cousins and the Atlanta Falcons, leading the AFC South. Not the AFC South, the NFC South at 5-3 and looking to keep their stranglehold on the division. But like I said, they have to fix some of their problems on defense and, of course, keep their red-hot momentum going on offense. So, the Falcons, they got to keep winning and winning those games to keep some distance off of Tampa Bay. Down in Baltimore, Bo Nix hoping to keep having Sean Payne unlock the offense more for him, continue that momentum from that good game against Carolina, but they got to face, this time, Baltimore Ravens. Yeah, a Ravens team at 5-3, looking to prevent themselves from having another upset loss, and they really got to keep pace with the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Steelers surprisingly doing well for themselves, but the Ravens at least got some help, but not the help that I thought they would get in new receiver Deontay Johnson from the Panthers. Like, why receiver? Like, they in an area that they don't really need at the moment. Like, why? It's like they need help at the defense. They need help in the pass rush. They need help in the secondary. Like, they need corners. They need a safety. They need another safety. What of all things, a receiver. You got Zay Flowers. You got Rashad Bateman. You got Mark Andrews. You got Isaiah Likely. Like another receiver. It's like you got help for Lamar Jackson already. Like, get help for your secondary. Like, why? Like, this makes no sense. Anyway, moving on. So the Miami Dolphins travel to take on the Buffalo Bills in this rematch of Week 2, where things got dicey with the injury to Tua Tagovailoa that put the Dolphins in this tailspin. But the Bills looking to once again put the hurt, but not literally, too much on Tua Tagovailoa and the Dolphins as they look to put their seal further on the AFC East. Tua looking for an upset over the Buffalo Bills and try to get some kind of split on the Bills in this season series. So be interesting how this plays out in this rematch, this time in Orchard Park of New York. Meanwhile, another division matchup on hand, and this one's a rematch of week 1. The Panthers actually might have a chance to pull off an upset when they face a beat-up Saints team in complete free fall, and honestly should be sellers at the trade deadline. And, even if Derek Carr returns to the lineup this coming week, honestly, not a lot of hope left for this team. Meanwhile, for the struggling Cincinnati Bengals at 3-5, they need to get something positive out of their defense when they host up a beat-up Raider squad at 2-6 that had plenty of opportunities to get a win over the Kansas City Chiefs and end their undefeated streak. But unfortunately, they just shoot themselves in the foot. They really do. Meanwhile, the Chargers look to follow up their strong performance on offense against the Saints, but gotta be careful not to fall into a trap that is Jameis Winston and the suddenly motivated skid marks at 2-6. So, yeah, Jim Harbaugh and the Chargers gotta watch out. They gotta watch out. Anyway, the Commanders look to rebound from a sluggish performance despite their win last week from that Hail Mary performance against the Chicago Bears. But yeah, Dane Daniels and the Commanders looking to get better when they face the New York Giants at 2-6 in this week 2 rematch. So the Commanders looking for that season sweep over the Giants and looking to further take control of the NFC East and keep it away from the Philadelphia Eagles. And then we have to have, of course, the at least one game where somebody has to win this kind of game. The Patriots at 2-6, maybe without the concussed Drake May, when they face the mentally drained Tennessee Titans at 1-7. Somebody's got to win this game. I mean, someone has to, right? Going to the late afternoon slate of games, Caleb Williams and the Bears at 4-3 look to bounce back from a struggling and heartbreaking loss in the nation's capital. But they got to head to the desert to face Kyler Murray and the Cardinals, coming off that good performance against the Miami Dolphins. And the Cardinals looking to take control of the NFC West at 4-4, while the Niners are on a bye. And then we'll talk about the other two teams in just a bit. But Arizona looking to put a stamp of sorts, and some more consistency would help too. The Jaguars looking to turn their last 2 performances into some kind of win, but it's going to be a tall task against the Philadelphia Eagles at 5-2. That's starting to heat up. But yeah, the Jaguars looking for an upset against this Eagles squad. And probably in the game of the week, the Detroit Lions and the Green Bay Packers go head-to-head in what's going to be a big, seriously, a big NFC North battle. Like Detroit at 6-1, the Packers at 6-2. This could be for the an early battle for the division. They're gonna face off against each other later on, but this has serious ramifications. Ladies and gentlemen, even if they don't have Jordan Love, the Packers are gonna be in for they can fight. They can fight with Malik Willis. I'll tell you that right now. This Red Hot Lions team, they shouldn't sleep on the Packers. So whether with or without Jordan Love, the Lions are going to be in for a fight. Let's put it at that. Then in the other afternoon game, the LA Rams, who are getting healthier, look to start a run to the NFC West division title. But they face the Seattle Seahawks in this division matchup, who have stagnated of sorts without DK Metcalf. So the Rams at 3-4, the Seahawks at 4-4 in the NFC West division battle. So it's going to be interesting who comes out on top. Then in the Sunday Night Football game that was flexed into this spot, the Indianapolis Colts, they have turned to Joe Flacco in a pursuit of a wild card spot. I don't know why, but that's what they are. Unfortunately, it's at the cost of getting Anthony Richardson some very valuable reps to further along his development. I don't get this move. I really don't. It's like, I get it. You're desperate to get a playoff spot right now, but you're doing it at the cost of developing Anthony Richardson, getting him some valuable playing time that he missed last year. So it's like, what are you doing? But that's what they want to do. Meanwhile, for the Vikings, speaking of desperation, they need to snap this 2-game losing skid that they're on to catch up with the Lions and catch up with the Packers in this division race. And fortunately, they managed to address one of the key areas of their problematic issue that they suffered in the last game against the Rams. Christian Darrisaw went down with a torn ACL injury that ended their season, and it seemed all hope was lost with that offensive line. But fortunately, they made a big trade to go and get from the Jaguars Cam Robinson to address that left tackle spot that was going to seemingly be all hope is lost. So they addressed that spot, and seemingly, hopefully, all should be good for the Vikings in this key Sunday night matchup. Meanwhile, for the Monday Night Football game to wrap up the week that's to come for week number 9, as we reach the halfway point of the season, Baker Mayfield and the Tampa Bay Bucks at 4-4 look to snap a 2-game skid in for how beat up they are when they travel to Kansas City to take on the undefeated Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs, who look to go 8-0 on the season in spite of their own problems at the wide receiver spot. So it should be an interesting slate of games, like a little bit of half of the slate has some quality matchups, at least right now on paper. We say that now, but then it ends up being disappointing. But we'll see. Hopefully, this will be a nice follow-up to the crazy week 8 that we had. So I'm a little excited. I'm a little excited for this slate that is to come, especially with my own team on bye that I don't have to stress about too much. So that is the week that was and will be in the 2024 NFL season. Let me know your thoughts on this past week, week number 8, your own takeaways, how your team did this past week, whether it's on YouTube or on social media at Very Cold Lasagna, where it's available. And then let me know your predictions for the upcoming week, week number 9. I'd like to know that as well. But for now, that is it for another episode of Very Cold Lasagna. I'm your host, Dylan Lasagna. Make sure to follow me on social media at Twitter and Instagram at Very Cold Lasagna. And until the next time, keep the lasagna very cold in the fridge with your takes on the world of sports. We'll be back with another edition of the week that was, and will be in the next one with week number 9, the week that was, and the week that will be week number 10. But until then, until I see ya, when I see ya in the next episode, peace out.